Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Wednesday, August 5th, 2020. And our top story today, we'll take a look at the U.S. regulatory process for employee benefit plans. And joining me now to discuss this and more is the Honorable Preston Rutledge, former Assistant Secretary of the Employee Benefits Security Administration. Preston, thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. It's great to be here. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And congratulations on your retirement from the Department of Labor, but also you had a very storied career, worked at the Senate Finance Committee. I know that you were a practicing attorney. So congratulations on your retirement and move to the private sector, I guess.
Well, yes, it is true. I have retired from federal service, but I haven't really retired. I do think there'll be a next chapter in the private sector. I'm happy to be back in the private sector, and it has been a really, really good career. I have been very fortunate to have been able to do all the things I've done, including getting to be the head of the Employee Benefits Security Administration at the Department of Labor. That was a great honor, and I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'm ready for the next chapter.
Yeah, well, congratulations again. So let's jump right in, and we welcome to the show. We're happy to have you as a contributor. And what I thought may make the most sense, and many of us remember Schoolhouse Rock, and the "I'm Just a Bill" standing on Capitol Hill. But I thought maybe for this show we would talk a little bit about the regulatory process, what that means, because I think a lot of Americans understand how a bill becomes a law, but the regulatory process is very, I wouldn't say complex, but there's a lot of different components to it.
Well, that's true. There are. And even the word regulatory has sort of I would say two major subdivisions. There's regulations, which are more formal and actually have done through the notice and comment process actually have the force and effect of law. Then there's the less formal. There's a lot of, we call that guidance. Things that mean a lot to people in the industry. They want to know, people want to do things the right way. They really do, in my experience. But sometimes in a complicated statute like the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA, it's not always easy to know just what the right way to do things are. And so we often will help people through our guidance. And there's a number of different forms of less formal guidance that don't go through the Federal Register. They don't carry the force and effect of law, but they do tell the industry what the Department of Labor thinks is the best practice and the appropriate practice. And if you want to, follow those, you're probably very safe in knowing that you haven't committed an ERISA violation.
And we should point out that the Employee Benefits Security Act, Administration, my apologies. I mean, you're not just doing retirement policy. There are a lot of different things that you had oversight on, or that this group had oversight on. Is that correct?
That's correct. Basically, any employee benefit plan that's sponsored by a private employer is within the purview of the agency I was leading. That includes the health insurance, the health plans. So if an employer has an insured health plan, that's covered. If they have a self-funded health plan, that's covered. Disability, life insurance, all of the things like that, as well as retirement, which we know, defined contribution plans, defined benefit plans. Think of it this way: if you're receiving a benefit other than strictly your wages or your salary through your employer, it is almost certainly considered an employee benefit plan that in some way or another touches ERISA and the Department of Labor, and also probably the Department of Treasury too. The statute affects both taxes as well as your duties to operate the plans properly in the interests of the participants.
Now, in terms of the what we're talking about, I think we're talking about the informal guidance. And where would people find this information? So you mentioned the Federal Register, which is published on a periodic basis, I would imagine, that lists every regulation. But then this informal process, are these posted to the Department of Labor or the Employee Benefit Security Administration's website that people can just go on and look?
Yes.
Just want to give the audience a sense of where they can
Yes.
find this very important information.
So you go to dol.gov, and if you want to do it in one quick step, it's dol.gov/EBSA.
Okay.
But if you just go to dol.gov, you'll see a drop down that says, oh, here are all the agencies, and you scroll down to the Employee Benefit Security Administration, click on that. And what you'll see is another menu. And the two to focus on there's a button to click on that says resources, and there's another button that says laws and regulations. So starting with the less formal, click on resources, and you'll see another drop-down box, and it'll have things like advisory opinions, FAQs, which stands for frequently asked questions, information letters, things like that. There's actually a fairly extensive list. And those are the things where you'll find where the department is opined on what ERISA means in certain factual situations, and that's done so people will understand in commonly encountered situations what the Department of Labor thinks you should be doing. And those are published on our webpage. They don't go through the Federal Register, and that's a very good place to go. You scroll through, and you'll often see that the letter will be something that was requested by a particular company. It might be a representative like a law firm or a consulting firm asking on behalf of their clients generally, or it might be a particular company that wants to know about something for themselves. And so you might get advisory opinions for particular companies. You might get information letters that are more generally applicable. And it's also interesting, information letters, a lot of folks don't know this. An information letter can be issued by a regional office, not just the national office. And we have 13 regional offices around the country. Most of the folks that run employee benefit plans are aware of their local regional office. For example, if you're in Boston, there's a Boston regional office. And most folks know that if they live there. Advisory opinions can only be issued at the national office level, though. So there's a level of formality in that sense, but not in the sense that it goes to the Federal Register. Another important thing you won't see on the website, but people are aware of, and I'd like your viewers to be aware of, is one of the ways in which we get the word out sometimes, frankly, is through speeches. You know, we give speeches. I gave speeches. My deputy assistant secretaries gave speeches. Even folks in the folks in the regional offices give speeches, local speeches. Things we often will use those opportunities to communicate our views on things. Now, obviously, that's not a legally binding thing, but we don't want to say something in a speech and then turn around and do something else in an enforcement case. So we're very careful, but it's an interesting and frankly, I think a useful way to learn quickly what the department is thinking about, especially on a breaking issue, something that's a little fresher, that hasn't had enough time to be thoroughly analyzed, but you'd like to have an idea of what the department thinks. And then there's one other thing we do that's not well known. We particularly focus this effort on small employers around the country in smaller cities. We do seminars. There's an office within the Department of Labor's EBSA called Benefits Advisors. Those are the folks, by the way, if you call 1-800, EBSA help, there is this 1-800 number on our website. The person that answers that phone will be a benefits advisor who will give you advice, honestly. I mean, they actually are there to answer questions. It's not an enforcement person. It's not an investigator. It's someone there to help a participant who has a question about maybe their eligibility for a benefit. It might be a plan sponsor that has a question. I mean, believe me, it's interesting. We sometimes will get calls from people that are standing in an emergency room and they're being denied entrance and they thought their plan covered it. And so we will help them understand if their plan does, and we'll help them get that benefit covered. It's a very interesting office, but one of the things they do as well is they conduct seminars, about a dozen or so a year. We target different parts of the country every year, so we spread things around. And we focus on inviting small employers in that region to those seminars. And the general thrust of those seminars is to help medium-sized and small employers understand the duties they have when it comes to operating their health plans and their pension plans. It's usually 401ks, obviously, and it's usually an insured group health plan. But employers often just don't know what their obligations are. They're happy to do the right thing. Sometimes they just want to know what the right thing is that they should do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Preston, I want to go to a quick commercial break. I mean, this is fascinating, really important information. When we come back, we'll talk more with Preston. We'll learn a little bit more about the EBSA and also maybe the formal regulatory process. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
If you are like 58% of Americans, you didn't go to college. Or you did, but never finished. Maybe it's the thought of a big, intimidating campus. At Independence University, all classes are held online. Maybe it's the thought of being alone in a sea of students. At Independence U, you'll get a personal support team to help you every step of the way. Maybe it's the cost of all those books and supplies. Online means no books to buy. We even give you a new laptop and tablet to keep when you graduate. Maybe your life doesn't fit typical college classes. At Independence U, our online college fits your schedule. Let's meet a few students.
Independence University held my hand through the process.
Don't be afraid to take the leap because it has changed my life drastically.
Just take the first step and you can do it. If I did it, you can do it too.
At IU, there's no barriers to your degree.
800-535-9916.
Welcome back. We're talking to the Honorable Preston Rutledge, former Assistant Secretary of the Employee Benefits Security Administration. Preston, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Thank you.
So we had a great conversation about the formal process, and people should definitely go on the DO website and go to the EBSA website. They should be aware, even if you're a participant or you're thinking about sponsoring a plan, should be aware of all these important resources. You can start there, make phone calls. There are people in Washington, or at least virtually right now probably, who are willing to help. Preston, before we kind of jump into the more formal regulatory process, what's the staffing like for the EBSA? How many people? Because I have to imagine there's lots of information that has to be gone through. You have lots of meetings. Right now they're probably virtual. But what's that staff like?
Well, at the Department of Labor, we have roughly 800 to 830 employees at any given time. People, and it fluctuates a little bit. Some people leave. We're in the process of hiring. That's roughly the level. Spread out between the national office and 13 regional and district offices. Everywhere from Seattle to San Francisco and LA and Kansas City and Dallas and Chicago, Miami, Atlanta, you get the idea. Philadelphia, Boston, New York, all over the country. And of course, since the COVID crisis hit, everybody was virtual for quite a while. And since I left, my last day at the department was May 31. I do believe folks are slowly coming back, but there's still a lot that's being done virtually. And I was quite proud of EBSA and the way we were able to really not miss a beat. Not only did we have to keep doing all the work we'd already been doing, which was very busy, we had to gear up for all of the COVID guidance. We needed to help people with COVID questions. We also did a lot in the way of relieving people of their deadlines to do filings, for example. 5,500 filings. There's a lot of different disclosures and reports that have to be filed throughout the year in the world of ERISA. And we were pretty much giving people a pass on those until after the pandemic ends. One thing, and again, before we go to the more formal guidance, one of the other forms of informal guidance I want your listeners to know about, I mentioned those FAQs, frequently asked questions.
Yep.
We really used the FAQ process to answer a lot of questions about COVID relief. So when you go to the webpage and you click on resources and you go to FAQ and click on that, you'll find a long list of things that were put out for health plans on COVID, for retirement plans. For example, we made it clear that employers could start using telemedicine benefits in their health plans immediately. They didn't have to wait and go through the normal 60-day notice process when they make a change to their benefit plan. A lot of plans before the COVID crisis did not allow, or they didn't cover telemedicine visits. And then they realized, boy, we better start doing that. So we made it so that's another example. Yes, 800 or so employees. And if that sounds like a lot, let me just say, there are over 700,000 retirement plans in America by private employers. I'm not talking about governmental employers yet. 700,000, that's retirement plans. On health plans, there's another 2.2 million health plans. And those other kind of plans I was talking about, the disability plans, the life insurance, what are known as welfare benefit plans, they're not welfare in the way we think of it, but they're non-retirement. That's another 2 million. So we have well north of 4 million plans to cover with only 830 employees. So we're a very small agency in that sense with a very large job. Another thing we do that a lot of people don't know is the Department of Labor is responsible for performing oversight of the federal thrift savings plan, which is the largest single defined contribution plan in the world, with almost $600 billion in assets. And for the last 2 years, it now also covers military employees of the federal government, civilian and military. So it's a big job for a small agency, but it's an exciting place, and the people there are just fantastic, I have to say.
Yeah, and they have to be passionate, and clearly they're not getting a lot of sleep if they're covering 4 million plans. Preston, let's talk a little bit about the formal process. We've got about 5 minutes left in this segment. You referred to the Federal Register, but there is a formal regulatory process. Would you take us through, explain that a little bit to those that are watching and listening?
Yes. So let's hit the main one first in case we run out of time, and that is what we normally think of as a regulation. Now, the thing about a regulation is you basically draft a proposed regulation. Department does, and the proposed regulation has a narrative preamble that describes what we're doing and why, and then it includes in that narrative preamble a what we call a regulatory impact analysis, but that's just bureaucratic speak for a cost-benefit analysis. We are required to show that the proposed regulation will benefit the system more than it will cost the system, cost benefit. Our economists do that work. And then comes at the end of the document, the actual regulation text. Think of that as statutory language, only it's in a regulation. It'll ultimately be published in what's called the Code of Federal Regulations. And something that's posted in the CFR is when I say formal, that's essentially what I mean. But the proposal process is the department has to do all that work, and that's done. Actually, that's not done publicly. We work on it. We prepare the proposal ourselves, and then we send it over to the Office of Management and Budget when we're done. They by rule they're the last place that gets to take a look at it in case they want to make changes or maybe stop us from doing it. Sometimes that happens, fairly rare. What happens when it goes to OMB is that's the first time you see some notice publicly that we've done something. You go to reginfo.gov and you'll see a list of items that agencies have sent to OMB. Now, all you'll see is the title of the rule, the proposed rule, and the date it was sent. But to a savvy person or a person that works in the field, they'll know from the title, oh, there's a rule over at the department, over at OMB. Like right now, there's one over there on pooled employer plans. And everybody knows that's the important pooled employer plan proposal on the Secure Act. It tells you the date it got there. What you don't know is when the proposal will go into the Federal Register. And that is not fixed. The OMB might take 2 weeks, they might take 2 months, you just don't know. But what you do know is that the proposal is at a very mature stage. And it won't be long, probably won't be long before it's proposed into the Federal Register. So then when that day comes, it is sent to the Federal Register, and then we generally alert the media the day before it's up. We have news conference, we have a news release. We'll have we'll maybe do an interview on the telephone with the media, and then it goes what they call it goes up on the table at the Federal Register on a given day. And as soon as that happens, and then it's public can read it. They have to go to the Federal Register to find it, but we also put it up on our webpage at that point, so we make it easy to find. And then within a day or two, it actually appears in the formal Federal Register. Those of you that ever looked at a rule in the Federal Register, you'll see it has like 3 columns. It's very formal looking. That is the actual proposal. And then when it's a proposal, the public comment period begins. It's not a final rule yet. The public is only just reading it. And the department needs to know what the public thinks. Public comments are very important. They're all read. They're all responded to one way or another. We either accept the comments or we don't. We explain why. And we frequently, in fact, I don't think I can think of a single rule where we haven't had a comment that didn't improve the rule and we accept it. We make the rules better through the comments. It's very much worthwhile making comments. Generally, the comment period might be 30 days, it might be 60 days, but it'll say in the proposal when the day the comment period will end, so you'll know. And of course, like all humans, people wait to the last second to get their homework done. And most of the comments come in on the last day or two. And then you go into another period of kind of non-transparency, I'll say, not because we don't want to be transparent, but because then we go into a phase where we have to read the comments, figure them out, sort them through, and start drafting the final rule. And that might be a couple months, it might be 3 months. There's times when a proposal is out for a year or more and you don't see the final. That hasn't happened when I was there, but it has happened, and I don't expect it to happen anytime for the next year or two, because everybody's pushing real hard to finish things up. But then the final rule will be published, and at that moment it's final. It'll be an effective date in there, and at that point it has the force and effect of law. And the most recent one that was finalized on May 27, right before I left on May 31, on May 27, the electronic disclosure rule was finalized. Something I worked on, our agency worked on very hard while I was there, and that it was a presidential priority. It was added to an executive order that we were asked to work on. And we got that across the finish line on May 27. So that's an example of one that people have recently lived through, where they saw the proposal in the fall of 2019, all the comments were made, we worked our way through them, and we did the final. That was kind of a textbook case of the way a formal rulemaking is done.
Wow. Well, Preston, thank you so much for first joining us in the program, but secondly, explaining this, because I think it really is enlightening for all of us watching and listening to you to learn more and reaffirm what we maybe didn't know about the regulatory process. We're looking forward to having you back on the program on a regular basis to talk about the environment, what's happening. I know you have a real passion for this, and we look forward to having you back on the program very soon.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I look forward to it as well. And thank you for inviting me.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, all in one place, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.